This is Math 208, Week 4, Section 4.2, Solving Applications. All right, this is one of those classic word problems that students hate in algebra, but it isn't that hard. We're going to draw a picture. So it says that a rectangular garden is 47 feet longer than it is wide. All right, what does that mean? Well, here's your rectangular garden. This is your length, this is your width, and because the rectangle is 47 feet longer than it is wide, we know, because it says so, that length minus width is equal to 47. All right, that's what it says so right here. The rectangular garden is 47 feet longer than it is wide. So there's that first equation. Now it says the perimeter is 310 feet. Now what the heck is perimeter? Well, perimeter is when you add up all of the sides of your rectangle. So you're going to add your two lengths, you're going to add your two widths, and you're going to get that 310 feet. So what does that mean? Well, if you add up your two lengths plus you add up your two widths, you're going to get 310. And there are your two equations, which means the answer is, I think it's F. Yeah, F right there. These two equations are right here for F. Now it says, well, yeah, but let's figure out the actual values. All right, so what are the actual values? So I'm going to start, and I'm going to rewrite those equations down here because we need them. And so there we go. I have them again. I just rewrote the equations. Now I'm going to take this equation, and I'm going to solve for either one of those letters. It doesn't matter which, but it looks like the least amount of work is solving for the length. And if I do that, that means I'm going to get rid of everything next to the L. I want the L all by itself. I'm going to solve for L, and that gives me L is equal to 47 plus W. All right. So now that I know that L is equal to 47 plus W, I'm going to insert it into this equation right here. So that means I'm going to get 2 times 47 plus W plus 2W equals 310. So really all I did was I took this L and I replaced it with 47 plus W. All right. And that means we have the distributive property here. We got the distributive property, so that means we're going to get, let's see, what is that? 94 plus 2W plus another 2W equals 310. I'm going to add those two W's, so that's going to give me 4W equals 310. Now I'm going to subtract both sides by 94. And so that gives me 4W is equal to, now I don't know what the heck 310 minus 94 is, so I'm going to grab my handy-dandy calculator, and I'm going to do 310, let's see, 310 minus 94, and that gives me 216. Now I'm going to divide by 4, and that gives me the width, and I'm going to do 216 divided by 4. That gives me 54. So the width is 54. Now remember, we were told right here that the length is 47 feet more than the width. So if I do 54 plus 47, 54 plus 47, that's going to give me 101. So the length is 101 and the width is 54. So when you enter in your answer into the equation, notice that they say they want the L first. So what they want is for you to do 101, 54. That's what they want you to put in on this equation. Now here you could see I've got the answers already, whatever. So it says, recall that two angles are complementary if the sum of their measures is 90. So basically they're saying you've got a right angle and two angles are complementary if those two angles, and let's say one angle is right here, and I'll call that A, and then the other angle is right here, and let's call that B. If those two angles, if you add them up, you get 90 degrees. So if you add those two angles up and you get a perfect 90-degree angle, they're called complementary. Now it says find the measure of the two complementary angles if one angle is 29 times the other angle. So if the tiny little itty-bitty angle is x, that means the other angle is going to be 29x because it's 29 times bigger. And we know that if we add these two angles together, we are supposed to get 90. So we can add, and we get 30x is equal to 90. Now we could divide both sides by 30, and that gives us x is equal to 3. So the tiny little itty-bitty baby angle is 3 degrees. Let's say that's this one right here. It's 3 degrees. And so what is the angle of the big angle? Well, it's going to be 29 times 3 because it's 29 times bigger. So 29 times 3 is 87. So our two angles are 3 and 87. So Sarah took the advertising department from her company on a round trip to meet with a potential client. Including Sarah, a total of 11 people took the trip. So that's going to be a key piece of information right there. And she was able to purchase coach tickets for $250. So the cheapo tickets cost $250. And first class tickets cost $1,240. And she used her total budget for $4,730. How many first class tickets did she buy? And how many cheapo tickets did she buy? So first thing that's important to know is we got some people who got the expensive one. We got some people who got the cheap one. So, but we know that there's 11 people total. So some of the coach and the first class. So the coach people and the first class people equals a total of 11 people altogether. All right, so that's the key starting point right there. Now we know that each of those coach cost $250 plus each of those first class cost $1,240. And if we add all of our money up, we get $4,730. So there is our other equation. So we've got these two equations, and when we solve by substitution, we're going to solve for a variable. So one of our variables is, so we need to get one of these variables alone, and it doesn't matter which one you get alone, just get one alone. And in this case, circumference, and I'm going to, let's see, I'm going to do coach is equal to 11 minus f. So that's the important formula right there, right here. And then what this C means, C is equal to 11 minus f. So wherever we see a C over here, we replace it with 11 minus f. So that's going to be 250 times 11 minus f plus 1,240f is equal to 4,730. Now right here, we're going to use the distributive property. So that gives us 2,750 minus 250F plus 1,240F equals 4,730. And now we're going to combine these like terms. And a quick way to do that is going to be 1,240 minus 250. And that gives us a positive 990F. And that's 2,750 equals 4,730. And now we're going to subtract 2,750 from both sides. And so that's 4,730 minus 2,750. And so this piece way over here is equal to 1,980. And the left side is just going to be 990F. And when we divide both sides by 990, because we want to get that F all by itself, you end up with F is equal to 2. So what did the F stand for? French fries? No, F stands for first class. And that 2 people are going to be sitting first class. And we remember that there were 11 people total. So how many people are going to be sitting coach? 9, because 9 plus 2 gives us the 11. So the big idea, first we had to write 2 equations. And the first equation was the fact that the coaches plus the firsts equals 11 people total. That's our first equation. And then the cost equation, that $250 per coach plus $1,240 per first class equals a total of $4,730. And once you get those 2 equations, the rest of it is just tons and tons of algebra. All right, so on this one, it says traffic signs are regulated by the manual, and the perimeter of the rectangular traffic sign is 136 inches. Also, its length is 12 inches longer than its width. Now, there's a couple of ways to solve this problem. In fact, there's a lot of ways to solve this problem. But one way to do it is to think about it as the guess and check chart. So its length is 12 inches longer than its width. So we know, though, the width and the length, and that we want the perimeter to be 136 inches. So we know that we want the perimeter. All right, so I'm just kind of setting it up. So if our width is 5 inches, I'm just making a total guess. What does the length have to be? Well, it says the length is 12 inches longer than the width. So if the width is 5, you have to add 12, you get 17. Now, how do you get the perimeter? Well, the perimeter is going to be 5 plus 5 plus 17 plus 17. So I'm going to type that in. I'm going to go 5 plus 5 plus 17 plus 17, and I get 44. Oops, 44. Was that the right answer? No. My goal was 136. So what does that mean? Well, that means I have to raise my guess. So let's raise it. Let's raise it to 12. I don't know why I chose 12. I just did. So what does the length have to be? Well, remember, the length has to be 12 inches longer than the width. So I'm going to take that width, I'm going to add 12. That gives me 24. Now, how am I going to find the perimeter? Well, I'm going to do 12 plus 12 plus 24 plus 24. So I'm going to do 12 plus 12 plus 24 plus 24, and I get 72. Well, I'm getting closer to my goal. I wanted 136. So I'm going to keep going. But I'm getting tired of guessing. So let me just guess W. So what does that mean the length is going to be? Well, the length is going to be W plus 12, because it's got to be 12 inches longer than the width. Now, how are we going to calculate our perimeter? Well, our perimeter is going to be W plus W plus W plus 12 plus W plus 12, meaning we're going to add a width plus a length and another length. So that's why there's 4 of them here: width, width, length, and length. And we want that entire thing to equal 136. So there is our formula that we're going to solve. And I'm going to combine like terms. So I see W 4 times. So that's going to be 4 W's plus 24 has to equal 136. See that? W plus W plus W plus W is your 4W. 12 plus 12 is your 24, and our goal is we want that perimeter to be 136. So what are we going to do? Well, now we're going to subtract 26 from both sides. So you get 4W is equal to 112. Now we're going to divide both sides by 4, and you get W is equal to 28. So the width is 28. Well, if we know that the width is 28, what does that mean the length has to be? Well, it has to be 12 inches longer. So that means the length is going to be 40, because 28 plus 12 gives us 40. And there are our 2 measurements. Now you got to remember, you got to pay close attention and make sure you put the width in and then the length, and don't get them swapped around. So in this case, what was it? 28 and 40. So here is kind of fun. The difference between 2 numbers is 13. And 5 times the larger is 18 times the smaller. So they're telling us specifically they want us to have X represent the larger and Y represent the smaller number. So the difference between those 2 numbers is 13. So that means X minus Y equals 13. The bigger number, subtract the smaller number, is 13, because that's what it says so right up there. Now we're also told that 5 times the larger, 5 times the larger is equal to 18 times the smaller. So there are our 2 equations. And now what we're going to do is we're going to solve for one of our variables. I'm going to solve for X because it's the easiest on this problem. So that gives us X is equal to 13 plus Y. And then over here, I'm going to replace the X with 13 plus Y. So that's going to be 5 times 13 plus Y is equal to 18Y. Then I've got the distributive property here. So that becomes 65 plus 5Y is equal to 18Y. Then I'm going to subtract 5Y from both sides because I want the variables all together. So I end up with 13Y on the right and 65 on the left. I'm going to divide by 13, and that gives me Y is equal to 5. So what was Y? Y was the smaller number. Whoa. So since Y was the smaller number, and we know that the difference between those two numbers was 13, so I'm going to add 13, and that tells me that the larger number was 18. So sure enough, 18 minus 5, right here, 18 minus 5 gives me the 13 that we're looking for. So that's the size of your two numbers. Your larger one is 18, your smaller one is 5. All right, so you've got a tugboat. It goes 180 miles upstream in 10 hours. You've got a return trip where it takes 5 hours. Find the speed of the tugboat without the current. So basically what's going on is you have a river. All right, and that river is flowing this way. All right, so it's flowing this way. So when the boat is heading upstream, so your formula is distance is equal to rate times time. And the distance is 180 miles because it says so. Now what's the rate? Well, the rate is the boat, the speed of the boat minus by the current, because that current is pushing the boat backwards. So it's rate minus the current, and he travels for 10 hours. So that is your formula for the boat going upstream. How about the boat going downstream? Well, you've got distance is equal to rate times time. The distance is still 180, but this time the rate is the speed of the boat plus the current, because that current is helping it along, and it travels for 5 hours. So what's our formula? Well, this becomes 180 equals 10R minus 10C. And way over here, this becomes 180 equals 5R plus 5C. And when we solve for this, let's see, let's solve for R. Oh, and let's do that with this guy, all right? So we're going to solve for R, which means we are going to add 10C to both sides. So that ends up being 180 plus 10C equals 10R. Now we're going to divide everything by 10, and that ends up equaling 18 plus C equals R. All right? So what does that mean? That means wherever we see an R, we can replace it with 18 plus C. So let's do that right over here. So that becomes 180 equals 5 times 18 plus C plus 5C. We've got a little bit of distributive property here. So that ends up being 180 equals 90 plus 5C plus 5C. And that equals 180 equals 90 plus 10C. We're going to solve for that C. So we're going to subtract 90 from both sides. So you end up with 90 is equal to 10C. So dividing by 10, divide by 10, tells us that C is equal to 9. So what was C? C stood for the current. So the current is traveling at 9 miles an hour. So we can put that right here. The current is traveling at 9 miles an hour. Well, how do we figure out what the rate of the boat is? Well, I see a formula right here. And if I know that 9 is really a C, I can replace this with 18 plus 9 equals R. So that means 27 is R. So the speed of the boat is 27 miles an hour. All right, now this one is a little bit different, although not terribly. So it says, if a plane can travel 490 miles per hour with the wind and 430 miles per hour against the wind, find the speed of the plane without the wind and find the speed of the wind. So the idea is, what is that 490 miles per hour? Well, that's the plane speed plus the wind speed, and that equals 490. In the same way, what's that 430 miles an hour? Well, that 430 miles an hour is the plane speed subtracted by the wind speed, because the wind speed is pushing against the plane and makes it go slower. So now it's only 430 miles per hour. So you have your two equations. It doesn't matter which one. Let's solve for one of the two variables, either P, meaning the plane speed, or W, meaning the wind speed. And I would say let's solve for P, because this one is pretty easy. So if we add W to both sides, you end up with plane is equal to 430 plus W. So now that we know what P is equal to 430 plus W, we're going to substitute it in over here. And so that ends up giving us 430 plus W plus another W is equal to 490. So now we can combine those W's, and that gives us 2W equals 490. Now we're going to subtract both sides by 430 because we want to get that W all by itself. And so that ends up being 2W is equal to 60. So W is equal to 30. So that tells us that the wind speed is 30. So now that we know that the wind speed is 30, you can plug it in right here. And so that gives us P is equal to 430 plus 30. And so that tells us that the plane speed is 460 miles an hour. So there are our two answers. When you type those answers in, you need to make sure that you are putting in the answer in the right order. First, it's going to ask for the plane speed, in which case you would type in 460. Then it's going to ask for the wind speed, in which case you would type in 30. All right, so on this one, we've got a laboratory, whoa, I don't want that mark. We've got a laboratory technician who needs to make a 108-liter batch of a 28% acid solution. And right now, the laboratory technician needs to combine that a couple of different batches. So basically, we've got some pure acid, and she's got some 10% acid, and she needs to mix those together to create a 20% solution. So imagine you've got one bucket of pure solution, and so that's 100%. And then you've got another bucket of 10%, and she wants to create a bucket of 20% solution. All right? So the idea is 100% of this first bucket, and we're going to call that X, right? And then we've got this one is 10% of this bucket, and we're going to call that Y. And the X and the Y is the volume, how much, like liters, in this case, liters. So 100% of the X liters, and then this is 10% of the Y liters, and we want it to equal, we're going to add these, and we want it to equal 20% acid of the 108 liters. All right, so what does that equation end up being? So this equation ends up being 100% times X plus 10% times Y is equal to 20% times 108. All right, that's kind of the formula, but we don't like percents. We're going to turn 100% into 1. And we're going to turn 10% into 0.1. And then this ends up being 0.2 times 108. All right. And then if we really wanted to make it simpler, we could multiply. And I need to bust out my handy-dandy calculator because we need to do 0.2 times 108. So 0.2 times 108, that gives me 21.6. So this is 21.6, and the left side is 100% of X plus 10% of Y. Okay, so there is our first equation. All right, we kind of did a lot of thinking, and that's really just the first equation. The second equation is, and let's move this. The second equation, so the first equation right here, I'm going to rewrite that right here. 1x plus 0.1y equals 21.6. Now the other equation is x plus y has to equal 108. Now how did I get that? Well, that's because the directions say if you take this bucket and this bucket, we want to have it equal 108 liters. So there are our two equations, and so we can solve for x. It doesn't matter which x we solve for, or we could solve for y, but I want to do x because it's, I think, easiest on this one. So let's subtract y from both sides, and so we end up with x is equal to 108 minus y. And so now wherever I see an x, I'm going to replace it with 108 minus y. So that becomes 108 minus y plus 0.1y is equal to 21.6. And then when we combine these, we get 108 minus 0.9y is equal to 21.6. All right, that's a 1, and minus a tenth gives us 9/10. And then I'm going to subtract 108 from both sides, and I end up with negative 0.9y is equal to, and I'm going to do that 21.6 minus 108, that gives me negative 86.4. And now I'm going to divide both sides by negative 0.9. And so these guys cancel, leaving us with just a y. And the right side, negative divided by a negative, is a positive. So all I have to do is 86.4 divided by 0.9, and that gives me 96. So y is equal to 96. And then x, the way we get x is we're going to substitute 96 in for the y. So we end up with x is equal to 108 minus 96. And 108 minus 96 is 12? 12. So x is equal to 12, y is equal to 96. Now what the heck does that mean? X is equal to 12, y is equal to 96. So x is equal to 12, y is equal to 96. So what that means is we need 12 liters of the pure acid added to 96 liters of the 10% acid in order for it to balance out to equal 108 liters. I think I've been saying ounces. I mean liters. 12 liters of 100% proof, so 12 liters of pure acid plus 96 liters of 10% acid is going to give us 108 liters of 20% acid. All right, this one's actually not too bad. This one is combined land area of two countries. A and B is 141,000. So combined means if you do A plus B, you get 141,973. Now it says here, country A is larger by, I can't see that number. What number is that? Let's see. Oh, 873. Okay, so country A is larger by 873 square kilometers. So what does that mean? If A is larger than B, so that means A minus B is equal to 873. So there's our two equations. And now we're going to solve. Oh, let's solve for A because it's practically done on this right one. So that ends up being A is equal to 873 plus B. So that means we can substitute that in. So you end up with 873 plus B plus that original B right there. So this is A. And that equals 141,973. And combining like terms gives us 2B is equal to 141,973. Now we're going to subtract both sides by 873. So you get 2B is equal to, and then I'm going to bust out my calculator, and I'm going to type in 141,973 minus 873, and that gives me 141,100. And so now we're going to divide both sides by 2. And so that leaves us with B on the left side, and on the right side that equals 70,550. So B is 70,550, I think it was square kilometers. Yeah, square kilometers. And so now that we know what B is, we put it in. And so that means A is equal to 873 plus 70,550. We use our handy dandy calculator, and we end up getting that A is equal to 71,423. square kilometers. And that answer makes sense because we knew A was supposed to be larger than B. And if we added them together, sure enough, we would get 141,973. And if we subtracted them, we would get 873. So that was that one. Very similar problem to question 9. You've got these two basketball players. Jackson, she scored 39 more points than the second highest scorer, which is Leslie. So what does that mean? So Jackson minus Leslie is equal to 39 points. Now it says together, Jackson and Leslie scored 1,203 points. So that means Jackson plus Leslie is equal to 1,203 points. Our job is to figure out how many points each player scored. So let's add L to both sides. So J is equal to 39 plus L. So I wanted to solve for one of the variables, and I could have used either equation. I chose this one, and I chose to solve for J because it looked like it was the easiest to do. And then J is going to be replaced by 39 plus L equals 1,203. So that means 39 plus 2L is equal to 1,203. Now we're going to subtract both sides by 39. So you end up with 2L is equal to, and now we're going to type in 1,203 minus 39, and that equals 1,164. Now we're going to divide both sides by 2. And that means L is equal to, and I'm going to divide by 2, and I get 582. So Leslie is 582. And we're going to substitute that in over here. So J is equal to 39 plus 582. And I'm going to add. And I get that Jackson is 621 points. So Jackson scores 621. Leslie scores 582. And that wraps up this problem. And this wraps up the video.